review on video. This time, Me and Mr Darcy by Alexandra Potter. One of the many Pride and Prejudice spin-offs that have been published since 1995, when the BBC released their fantastic version of Pride and Prejudice. This is a book crossing book that I borrowed from a friend who's also, like me, a huge Jane Austen fan, and who also loves reading sequels and spin-offs and all kinds of Jane Austen stuff. Because we've read all of Austen's own work, and it just is not enough. So she and I, and also another friend of ours, we're always looking out for spin-offs and sequels that we read and share and discuss and hopefully enjoy. So I really wanted to enjoy this book. I really did. And I tried really hard. And I kept trying. Up until quite late in the book. But I finally had to give up. This is not a good book. I would almost go so far as to say that it's a bad book. Or I might be kind and say that it's an average book, just badly written. The plot is that our heroine, Emily, basically has a boring life. She has a nice job that she loves, of course, as a bookseller, but otherwise boring. And she's going to be spending Christmas and New Year's alone because her parents are going on a cruise. So she decides to instead go to England. She's supposedly American, she lives in New York. She decides to go to England and go on this tour, like follow in Jane Austen's footsteps kind of tour. And of course it's mostly women, older women, older than she is. She's like late 20s, I think. But there's also one guy who's a journalist writing about why women love Mr. Darcy. And that actually isn't fully explained in the book, which is completely stupid because the reason why women love Mr. Darcy is so obvious that everyone should be able to see it, but that's another story. Anyway, this guy is like a scruffy, bad-mouthed, lazy, stupid jerk. So, no prizes for guessing what's going to happen between these two. And, you know, she just travels around and follows in Mr. Darcy's footsteps and blah blah. But then, suddenly, on one of these places in a house where Austen lived or something, she suddenly actually meets Mr. Darcy. Like, oh my god. He suddenly just is there with her. And she has the chance to finally live her dream. And theoretically, it sounds fun. If you want to see this idea carried out well, you should watch the British miniseries Lost in Austen from 2008, I think. This book's from 2007, which has a woman from our time going back in time into Pride and Prejudice and basically messing up the entire plot. And that is done brilliantly. It's funny, it's charming, it's hilarious, and Lost in Austen is a really good spin-off. This is a bad spin-off. But it's not really the idea's fault. The idea is pretty good, and it could have worked if you can suspend your disbelief about the whole meeting Mr. Darcy thing. But of course, since I'm reading this book, I'm obviously already willing to suspend my disbelief on that score. But this book is bad because it's very badly written. The language doesn't convince for one single second. And the main reason for that is that Potter, whom, as far as I can tell, is English, she has picked a character, or created a character, who is American. Supposed to be American. But she writes her in English. I mean in British English. So that, because the story is written in the first person narrator, supposedly by an American. And yeah, the book, the internal monologues of the main character, her dialogue, and just everything that she narrates is just chock full of Anglicisms. And when I say there are a lot of Anglicisms in this book, I mean like on every single page. Sometimes more than once on one page, and it's like, you're American, You don't say, we had a frightful row, frigging hell. I mean, you might say it occasionally, but that's not going to be the standard part of your vocabulary. We had a big fight, we had an awful fight, we didn't have a frigging row. I mean, it's just, I can't even remember half of it now, but there are so many things here that just says to me, English, 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 as in British English. And it's coming out of the mouth of what is supposed to be an American who has never set foot in England before the events of this book. And it just doesn't convince me for a single second. And then, as I said, I wanted to really like it. But this awful language, kept sort of adding to what was a cheesy plot. If a cheesy plot is well written, I can enjoy it as well as the next girl, but when a cheesy plot is badly written, that is much harder to stomach. And when I then started getting stuff here which just shows me that the author hasn't thought through what she's doing at all. Like, in one scene, the main character meets a woman, an English woman, in a pub. And here you have, in 2007, an English girl, like 20-something, early 20s, who's a huge Cat Deeley fan and has never heard of So You Think You Can Dance. What the fuck is that about? That's not gonna happen. And then finally, the straw that broke the camel's back for me, and that made me say, I give up, I can't possibly like this book is crap, is the scene where basically they're going out horseback riding, Emily and Mr. Darcy, and he saddled the horse for her, obviously, as he would saddle it, being from like the 1790s, as he would saddle his and her horse. But Emily, she can't ride side saddle, so she just sits astride, and he is shocked. And I just have to say, this author is an idiot who can't even have watched any period movies or otherwise. She must know that if a horse is saddled with a side saddle, you can't just mount it astride because that's what you prefer. It has a fucking chair strapped to its back. You can't just mount it astride. And I really feel when an author doesn't even take the time to think totally basic things like that through, I feel she doesn't care about her own book. And I really, really don't see why, if the author doesn't care about this piece of shit, why the hell should I care? And the newsflash is, I don't care. This is a book that is not worth your time reading. I could recommend so many more, infinitely better Pride and Prejudice sequels and spin-offs, and I'm gonna. I plan to do a video on just that one of these days. The only reason to read this book is because you want to cross it off your list if you're insane like me and want to read every single Pride and Prejudice spin-off. But in itself, it has very little literary merit, and what could have been a good plot idea is basically ruined by the author's inability to write well. But now I've tried her, and I know that I will never read another Alexandra Potter book again. And I'm very glad to know that I didn't spend any money on this piece of crap. Too bad for my friend Findever, who did, but that's the way it goes. She did me a favor, at least. Me and Mr. Darcy, not worth your time. Don't bother with it.